I am Dr. Daria Tataj, founder of Tataj Innovation and chairwoman of high-level advisors to EU Commissioner for Research, Science and Innovation. I am often invited to speak about disruptive innovation in the network society around the world, and this topic is very important because business leaders and policymakers often do not understand the nature, direction and speed of the changes around us in the world. The changes enabled absolutely by disruptive exponential technologies and also by very dramatic, deep changes in our society, in what Professor Manuel Castells, with whom I have worked for a number of years, theorized as the network society. What is important is that we understand that today, to grow, every ecosystem needs to have 4 pillars: research, education, innovation and entrepreneurship. And they tend to function in silos. It's difficult to integrate them all. This is why, based on my research, I developed a methodology that I call network thinking, innovation through network thinking, and it basically helps people from business, from small companies, from universities, research labs, governments, and from society at large work together. And network thinking is about helping people work in networks and innovate by collaborating. I was one of the founding board members of the European Institute of Innovation and Technology, and our ambition was to design an institution that would be far away from a traditional grant-giving institutions funding research and innovation. We wanted to create an impact investment institute. An impact investment institute that could bring an impact, economic and social impact for Europe at the scale, this was our dream, of the MIT. You cannot create an MIT in the 21st century. This is why our model was very different. We wanted to create a new type of public-private partnerships of the best research universities in Europe, the most innovative companies and NGOs and research labs, and put them together with a very novel governance model. So today I am very proud that the EIT, through its knowledge and innovation communities, has created or has helped create thousands of jobs, hundreds of startups, and I do believe that these startup entrepreneurs will be able to scale up their companies to global markets, and let me emphasize, and stay in Europe. This was a unique opportunity where you can experiment hands-on with creating a new institution. And this process of experimenting, setting up the new governance model, setting up the new management systems, bringing the right talent, it's an interesting learning path, and I'm very proud that Commissioner Carlos Moedas, European Commissioner for Research, Science and Innovation, has invited me a few years to advise him on the directions for European policy. I'm absolutely honored to become 2 years ago the chairwoman of the RISE group, which is Research, Science and Innovation, high-level advisors, experts, flanking Commissioner as his brain trust, as a sounding board to strategize, to come up with novel approaches, with new ideas. And when you look today at the Horizon Europe, what we hope will be €100 billion investment into science and innovation for the next 7 years, a lot of our ideas have become cornerstones of Horizon Europe. And just to enumerate the few topics that we've been working on and contributing with strategic advice is about the investment, and about the investment, the so-called patient capital, which will be done through European Innovation Council, which we hope will be a €10 billion instrument of a blended finance, partly grant and partly equity, to bridge the funding gap in Europe between the small companies and then the scale-up companies, based on deep tech, based on scientific discoveries, and based on cutting-edge innovations. In terms of mission-oriented policy, we advocated the shift from the big vision and the big focus on challenges. The challenges really we're very aligned with the Millennium Development Goals. Now, we seem to be we seem all to agree what needs to be done. We know what are the challenges. We know what are the priorities. The real challenge is how to do it. And this is why we advocated putting a focus on mission-oriented policy, working with my colleague, Professor Mariana Mazzucato, who published the report on the mission-oriented policy. Our thinking at the RISE group fit into this report, and what we believed on was that to consolidate the whole, if I may call it, the value web of how value is created in today's economy, in today's society. So engage citizens, engage researchers, bring in industry, connect them through an open innovation thinking, or what I like to call the systems thinking or the network thinking, and help them deliver concrete results within a certain time horizon. Over 1 year of our Tour d'Europe, where we visited many European countries, we gathered the ideas and published them in a book 101, Ideas for Europe's Innovation and Research Policy. Now, 101 ideas, it's a lot of ideas, and how to make sense and prioritize. So in March, we prepared an event where Commissioner Moedas was present to discuss these ideas. And we actually invited the leading policymakers in the area of research and innovation from Europe to discuss which ideas should be taken on board and how. We voted after the discussion, which was an interesting result, in 3 pillars. Number one, vision and values. And in this area, the top 2 voted ideas were growth with direction and building on European values. In the second pillar, impact in investment, the top 2 rated ideas were capture value in Europe and then provide long-term financing. And in the third pillar, governance and synergies, there were 2 ideas which reached the top. So number 1 was align research and innovation policies with remaining policies in Europe, and number 2, focus on impact. The traditional way we think about Europe is to say, what is the competitiveness gap between the US? It used to be Japan, but now more and more China. Now, I agree with my colleagues and other policymakers who contributed to the book 101 Ideas that we should change the narrative, that we cannot always compare ourselves, which does not mean not to be attentive and see where the world is going. But not comparing ourselves to the US and China means that we need, in a way, to come to the roots of what is the success of Europe today. And of course, there's not single root, it's always many historical factors. But if I were to ask, to people I lecture, or when I speak, or when I speak with young entrepreneurs, or with students, or with business leaders, I ask, now, you surely know the name Philips, Siemens, Citroën, Lafarge, Nobel. So what are these names? And very often people say, yeah, these are the big European brands of largest enterprises or of the Nobel Prize, but they do not make the connection that these are actually the family names. And the whole success of Europe today is based on entrepreneurial people who are able to take the inventions the technological progress of the early industrial revolution and translate this into economic profits, into solutions that matter to people. And I think that speaking about Europe, we should be very proud and we should put a lot of emphasis on entrepreneurial people who have been changing and who are changing today our future. Because in the science community, we have a lot of absolutely phenomenal people, some of whom decided to leave academia and see how they can make impact through their research by setting up companies, by setting up projects. And we do not celebrate these people enough, I believe. I hope that with the European Innovation Council, which will provide long-term funding for most disruptive ideas, for most disruptive market-creating innovations, Europe will have soon similar projects that can turn around our future. And setting up the standards for 5G, building infrastructure for artificial intelligence, deploying the blockchain to transform public and private business models is absolutely fundamental for Europe. And we cannot neglect that whether we want or not, we are part of this global interconnected system. And today, Europe should really invest in consolidating the technological position. And research and innovation policy is fundamental for this. We live in the world ideas where change happens at so many different directions that it's really the deficit, not of good ideas, but it's a deficit of framing these ideas and understanding where we're going, how we want to get there, and what will happen when we arrive at this point. This is why I value very much that number one most quoted ideas was growth with direction. And you cannot grow with direction if you don't engage citizens. And I would say that the model of engaging citizens has changed very much over the last years. And it has not to do so much with the digital technologies, which of course make all different, but it's much beyond the use of digital tools. I would say that engaging citizens has a lot to do with the identity, the crisis of legitimacy of the government and the identity of the governments, who they really represent and how they represent. And I think that you cannot engage citizens in the way which, if I may call it, a paternalistic attitude, that you know better than the citizens because you're in government and you're well educated. I think that today you really need to appreciate the power of every single individual to change the course of history. And in the recent history, there are many examples. For example, the Arab Spring started with one text message. Occupy Wall Street was enabled by just a few people interconnecting real time and self-organizing. So engaging citizens means something different. It's not about consultations. It's not about asking their opinion. It's about engaging them in co-creation, in co-design. And I like the way my colleague from the RISE group, Professor Verganti, frames it. It's a little bit an IKEA effect, so that the last 10% of the production of a policy should be left to citizens. My favorite example about citizens' engagement are how cities are doing it. And of course, since I'm based in Barcelona, I observe with deep interest the progressive policies on citizens' engagement, on digital agenda, on promoting all sorts of innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem with great interest. And if I were to distill some lessons from how Barcelona has been experimenting with engaging citizens, it's definitely learn by doing approach. So it's having them being part of the process from the very beginning. And it's not only a digital process. I know we're digital humans today. We spend most of our interaction on the web, but we are human, and this physical human interaction matters a lot. And let me give you an example of one experimental project that we have done through our Tataj Innovation studio in Barcelona. Last year we experimented how to reinvent mid-sized cities. Personally, I care a lot about the cities that have this potential for growth, but somehow are stuck in the past. And we wanted to help them develop more leadership, more vision and more power to change. So it was a very interesting process. We call it a city accelerator. Basically, components included a hackathon where brightest people, engineers, PhD students from around Europe thought about a challenge: how to reinvent the post-industrial district spreading between famous 22 Arroba 22 Innovation District of Barcelona, and then the industrial polygonus, and then the old city of Badalona, which used to be the factory, not only of Catalonia, but really the factory of Spain 40, 50 years ago. Now, this area spreading between these two city centers has a huge potential, but somehow it's difficult to consolidate forces and transform it. So we brought the students, gave them a challenge to reinvent the famous three chimeneas, the big power plant at the shore of Barcelona metropolitan area. Then we developed a masterclass to bring the ecosystem together, starting with the Catalan government, Badalona government, big universities, research labs, entrepreneurs, to help them develop, through our approach to innovation network thinking, the system approach. How we could all change it, what would be for every single institution in this change. Then we worked with those entrepreneurs who developed ideas through an innovation retreat in our unconventional office on the beach in Badalona to help them fine-tune the ideas and then pitch to the mayor of Badalona, connecting the whole value web from an idea, which is fantastic to have, to the decision maker, the policy leader who can actually build on these ideas, give them political support, and with political support, investors can transform complex projects such as an urban district into an innovation district. We are digital, but we are human. And this is why I believe that we also need those physical environments where you have a collocated research labs, universities, big businesses, modestly priced, reasonably priced, living areas with good schools. And this is what I call an innovation district. And being brought up in one of the industrial regions of Poland, I really like to see how this industrial heritage that becomes a legacy, such difficult to transform, can be reinvented for the digital age. This is why you need to have this component of, let me call it software. So thinking in terms of building the entrepreneurial innovation ecosystem, which always comes by collocating three assets: talent, knowledge, and funding. But this collocation aspect is very important. We need physical area. And in the metropolitan area, these are usually neighborhoods, spreading, growing, merging, interconnecting, that becomes those innovation hubs, those innovation districts. And this is why I believe it's important from the policy making view to think differently. Rather than thinking in silos, okay, we have research innovation policy, we have regional development policy, we have digital agenda, we have cohesion policy. This all should be interconnected into a system thinking. And when you look at the younger generation, sometimes I think we should empower them more because they are really the future. And rather than us telling them how we want the future to be, we should give them space to experiment how to become leaders. Today it's all about learning to become, and through our work, through this innovation, through network thinking, we assist people into growing up to how to lead change, how to become leaders in the world where technology empowers everyone.